So challenge would be definitely to sign up and then just like give it a go. Because you can reach like a magic moment really quickly where you've like built an agent in like less than 2 hours. Any business or learner, if they want to upskill in AI, to come to us. I think our long-term vision is like we think the future of work is changing. The critical thinking skills and creativity are just going to become like more and more important. If anything, maybe we'll add some courses about them in Build Club in the future in terms of like how to practice like creative thinking, because I do think that's also like a muscle you can learn.
Welcome to Moonshot. Today's guest is Annie Liao, a 23-year-old founder who has already built one of the world's fastest growing AI communities and is reshaping how we learn, build, and adapt in the AI era. At just 23, Annie turned a weekend side project into Build Club, raising $1.8 million, growing to 10,000 members and shipping over 11,000 projects across 40 cities. And when Lovable, the $2.75 billion AI unicorn and fastest growing startup in history, needed a learning academy, they turned to Annie and Build Club. Together, they launched the Lovable Learning Academy in just 6 weeks. Before that, Annie had already been a data scientist, a consultant at BCG across Asia, a venture capitalist investing in AI, and chief of staff at a fast-growing startup. Experience she viewed as a groundwork for her boldest move yet. This conversation is about what it really takes to build at speed, turn learners into builders, and embrace the belief that hands-on beats passive learning, and to explore how Bounties are helping people get paid while they learn. If you've ever felt behind in AI, wondered how to pivot careers, or wanted to see what it looks like to dream on a global scale, this is the episode for you. If you haven't yet subscribed, now's the time. Follow the show for more moonshot conversations with the world's most inspiring minds. I'm your host, Tatjana Pandurevic. Let's dive in. Annie, thank you so much for joining me on the Moonshot podcast. You're in the middle of growing one of the fastest growing AI learning platforms globally. It's a real privilege to have you here today, and I can't wait to talk about everything you're doing with Build Club.
Nice. Thank you so much for having me.
So you've had many roles already. You've been a data scientist, a consultant, even a chief of staff at a fast-growing startup. How did you first get into AI, and how did that lead you to Build Club?
Yeah, that's a really good question. So I actually studied accounting and business in university. So obviously not through my degree. But one of the beautiful things about my degree was it was a co-op degree. So I actually started like working in first year of university at an Australian bank called Westpac. And it was through there where I like, started to dabble a bit more into the world of AI, kind of by coincidence. It was like in the last week of my like rotation there as an intern, and they were like, "You can choose any team you want to be in." So I chose to join like a AI, like data science team, and I learned to code like on the job in that team. I think that really taught me was like the value of like learning by doing and like being in an environment where you're kind of like supported and mentored by people who are just like generally excited about technology and AI. And this was all like pre ChatGPT. So we were still just like writing like Python scripts and things like that from scratch. But yeah, so worked at Westpac as a data scientist in the end for 3 years, and then when I graduated university, didn't really know what I wanted to do. And I think the typical pathway for people that don't really know what they want to do is to do consulting, because you kind of get a sample a bit of every industry. So I worked at Boston Consulting Group for a year. And I think like during that period, I learned a lot about like how to work hard, how to manage stakeholders, and a lot about like I guess different industries and how AI is transforming different industries. And kind of burnt out, to be honest, in the end, and went back into like the world of startups, which I was like pretty interested in university. So I landed a job in venture capital. And that's actually where Build Club was founded. It started out as a community movement where just like on Sundays, because a lot of my friends would end up being like AI founders in Australia. A lot of my friends would like go to San Francisco where there's like a lot of cultural community and like building together, and then come back to Australia and there's not that much here. And everyone kind of hears about San Francisco being like the heart and center of AI. And we wanted to bring that energy to Australia. So started just running like every Sunday. We go to a Starbucks with our laptops and code. And there's a lot of other people that wanted to do that. And that's like kind of the origin stories of like Dual Club too. Yeah.
You and your friends sound very cool. I'd love to have joined you for one of these coffees, coding in the weekend. And so it started as a weekend project, but how did it build and grow into being such a large community in a relatively short period of time?
Yeah. There's definitely been a lot of learnings along the way. I think a lot of people say like community is very hard to scale. And even today, it's still something we're trying to figure out with Build Club. Because we started off actually not growing it beyond Sydney for a really long time. Because I was still trying to figure out like what Build Club was. Like, is it a place where people go to build like VC backed startups, or is it a place where anyone can go to like learn AI? And in the end, we just like looked more at like the members and who was interested. And it became more of a community for people that just wanted to build like cool things with AI. So you didn't have to be technical to join. And I think once we like nailed that like mission and vision, it was a lot easier. For example, someone wanted to run a community co-working in another city for them to run it there. And then um, we started to roll things up into like a playbook. And people found just like a lot of value in leveraging our brand as we grew bigger and bigger. Because if they're just like a lonely founder, for example, in like Jakarta, I think there's always like the cold start problem. But with Build Club, like our community is like a super, super, super like open brand. And that just like, yeah, makes it easier for other people to join in on the movement.
So on the surface, Build Club might look just like another learning platform, but it clearly isn't. You've got 10,000 members, 11,000 projects shipped. For someone that's new to this, what is Build Club? How would you describe it? And what makes it work for both technical and non-technical people?
Yeah, that's a really good question. So, um, Build Club, like our mission is to democratize access to AI education. And we do that by helping like businesses and also learners like stay on top of the AI wave. So how can we take like the knowledge which everyone like in San Francisco, like everyone talks about AI in every conversation. How can we distill what's happening at the forefront and like help everyone getting access to that around the world? Um, so actually when we go to sell, I guess like our product to businesses, which is like our main like revenue stream, we're not actually classified as like a learning and development platform. Um, because what we believe is like with AI, the best way to like learn it and like learn to utilize the tools, it lies in like the hardest bit is adoption and like changing behavior. So we do have like courses on our platform where we partner with like some of the top companies out there. But what really makes us different is that focus on like adoption. So for example, how can we get people to, instead of going to Google, to go straight to ChatGPT and do that every day in like a workplace environment and make it fun and gamified where you're kind of like competing with your colleagues and sharing like the different AI projects you're building. And I think taking that angle has allowed us to like really differentiate against like the more traditional course platforms.
So you've got a really hands-on building philosophy. Can you explain why? So if someone who's listening right now has only ever watched YouTube videos or has read blogs and news online, how impactful is it to actually have the hands-on learning where you actually apply what you learn and build, whether it's an app or a product, whatever it might be? How much more of an impact does that have in building confidence?
Yeah. Yeah, so that's like one of the core theses, I guess, and like why we're called Build Club instead of like Course Club or something like that. I think it's because when we were running the really early days of Build Club, just like people like gathering, like one of the key things we did was like at the end of this co-working session, like what have you shipped and like actually built into production? Because I think like the thing is with AI, if you're an expert in a 1 week, the landscape changes really quickly. Um, like, for example, tools can update, like even like the user interface of like Lovable, for example, might change from like 1 week ago to today. So it's all about how can you like stay up to date and like build things which actually work in production. And the best way to do that is just like building and tinkering and problem solving. I think learning fundamentals is very key, and that's why we have like courses for fundamentals on our platform. But then beyond that, a lot of it goes into the other thing we also focus on is community learning. So people can accelerate faster. For example, in an organization, if you have a forum where you can like share prompting tips with each other or like team up with your colleagues on like a challenge, is like one of the biggest unlocks I think for being able to drive like AI innovation internally.
I couldn't agree more. It really starts to steer learning home when you're actually experiencing and using the tools and building yourself in lots of different capacities. How accessible is it to non-technical um, people who've never really built using tools before? Because it can seem quite overwhelming or scary to when someone says you can learn and you can build yourself. How easy is it to learn to do that on Build Club?
Yeah, I'd like to think it's very easy. But I think, to be honest, Build Club is just like we help you just like get over the hump of getting on the tools. The exciting thing about AI is like now anyone can, I guess, like code. I think they say like text is a new coding language. So as long as you can like know how to prompt, anyone can really code. So like with a lot of the businesses we work with, probably like like non-coder domain experts are the people we see actually benefit the most from like learning AI. Um, because now they've like unlocked a whole new skill set of like actually being able to, for example, if you're like a product manager, you can create like a prototype yourself very quickly instead of having to go for like a business analyst and then like a developer to build like the proof of concept. So it's actually really exciting for a lot of roles out there.
Yeah, I agree. I was at an event yesterday and I was talking about this concept of in the past when we used to say that technology is being democratized. We used to say that in the form of it's accessible to more people, but not that those end users can actually build anything themselves. We mostly talked about that in terms of accessibility. But I think one of the most exciting things about AIs is exactly what you've just said. It's truly democratized, as in it's unlocked a whole new realm of possibility for people that if you weren't a developer previously, you wouldn't have been able to do anything that's available today just with how much, the technology has evolved.
Yeah, definitely. It's a super exciting time. And I think democratizes also being able to get into like different career um roles and jobs out there. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. You mentioned Lovable earlier, and I'd love to talk to you about this. So they're the fastest growing company of all time, and they turned to you to build their learning academy. How did this collaboration come about? And can you talk to me about the behind the scenes of that 6 week sprint?
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. It's definitely one of our most exciting collaborations we've done, and kind of happened very serendipitously. So, we were running events in San Francisco, and then Talisha, who's like the community lead at Lovable, we just like started talking to her and like, okay, let's like run like a random brunch on a Sunday morning together at X's office. Um, and then we filmed her a bit, just like talking about the product. And then I think it was like the week after she was just like Slack DM'd us and was like, hey guys, let's do an academy. We have like a program we want to launch in like 4 weeks' time, I think it was. Can't remember the exact time frame. But like if you guys are in, let's do it. Yeah, so it's a pretty hectic sprint. She flew in from Atlanta to like film with us, and then we like work with them on like the course curriculum, um, like workshops, like the key pain points people usually face when they're like onboarding into Lovable and like use cases and like filmed like the build along videos. And then we uploaded them into our platform and then also helped film like the Lovable shipped videos too, which they launched with. Yeah.
That is so cool. So how many videos did you create within was it a 6 week sprint?
I can't remember. I think it was 4 or 6. I think there was definitely more than 30 modules. So yeah, it was a lot of filming. Yeah.
That is incredibly exciting. What a collaboration. And I'm sure it will just continue to lift all the different partnership opportunities you can have with Build Club as well. You've got a bounty marketplace, which is another really interesting idea on the platform. Can you share a little bit more about this?
Yeah. So I guess like one of the big concepts behind Build Club is like the learn by building mentality. Um, and one project we're working on launching soon is like the Bounty marketplace. So we have like a MVP version of it. But I think like in startup world, you always just like test things, get the user flow right, and then do things that don't scale. And then when it works, build it. So at the moment, our team is probably halfway through the sprint of actually building that Bounty marketplace. Because you're also building like payments and make sure it's like very secure and things like that. But essentially, the like decision point we had where we're like, oh, should we scale this feature? So I used to get like a lot of LinkedIn DMs where people would like ask for AI engineers to build like their project for them. And then I was chatting to Jonathan, who's like our Jakarta city lead for Build Club. And he runs like an AI consulting company. And he was like, wow, Annie, I had like this cool experience where there was like an architect who came to one of the Build Club co-working sessions who had no idea how to code. And then for our platform and then like through leaning on other community members, he learned like this cool no code tool called NAN, which is one of the most popular like no code workflow building tools out there. And then he actually started working with this person who he had trained up to do consulting projects together. And then he was like, if you don't build this, I'm gonna build it. So like, okay, let's work together to build it. So he's like helping out as an expert as we develop this. Um, but essentially there's like a lot of like really talented AI engineers out there, especially in like Southeast Asia, where we have really strong community presence, where there's a lot of good opportunity to help connect like a global network of like customers to them. So that's like the problem we're tackling with the Bounty marketplace.
Yeah, and it sounds I think the part about it that's particularly exciting is that it starts to have this all-in-one platform that you've got on Build Club, both for learning, the ability to earn by shipping projects, and it's building an entirely different community that's existed in the past, within this domain, which I think is really exciting.
Yeah,
So
yeah, it's a big flywheel.
you've yeah, that's such a great way to describe it. It's the very early stages of a big flywheel. You've scaled, the Build Club community to over 40 cities, is that correct? Ho
Yeah, yeah, that's right.
how do you maintain the same sense of magic that you had in Sydney as you scale globally, and have the same type of culture that you wanna build within the community? How does that work?
I think a lot of it comes down to the people. So, Sambi, who is like our chief of staff, like works really closely with me on this. So every new city lead we bring in, we interview one on one, and really get to know them. Um, and it's actually been like pretty like I'd say like we haven't had many problems with like our city leads doing anything rogue, for example. I think a lot of that comes down to just like our community is just like very like free. We're not trying to monetize the community. It's just like very open and like out there. So I think it attracts like the right type of people in the community. And I think when there's people that maybe don't fit the mold, it's just like naturally they just like don't find joy in going to the events anyway. Yeah, so I think a lot of it comes down to like the people we have, like the early believers. Um, and then we also support our city leads quite a lot with like finding venues for events. We have a playbook on like how to run events, and then all our city leads are in like a closed community with each other, so they can lean on each other for help too. Yeah.
Yeah, it's incredible because you're scaling globally so quickly, and those I guess those initial people that you've got on the ground are quite important. But it's yeah, it's I just find it remarkable to maintain that same sense of culture as you manage to scale to so many cities around the world. I've also read that you fly your top builders to San Francisco for an accelerator every year.
Mm.
How does this work?
This was something we did before. I think it was actually 2 years ago. It was like a project we worked on with AWS. So yeah, essentially we just got funding to run like accelerator in Australia. And the whole thesis behind the accelerator was, could we find like maybe like a 1 to 3 person team, like highly technical team that would build like a unicorn company? Because we thought that now with AI, anyone can scale faster than ever, and build faster than ever. I think software has like been democratized to some degree. So really betting on small teams to like dream big. And a big validation point, I think, for every startup is being able to, I guess, like make it in San Francisco, because that's where there's like a lot more competition, and just like a different environment. So that's why there's like the San Francisco link to that. And we have like some good success stories like come out of that accelerator. So for example, Unsloth, they got into Y Combinator recently. And a lot of other people went on to raise rounds, like Mary Technology raised recently. Tempest also raised from Galileo. And I think one or two teams got into Startmate. Another one got into Techstars. Um, yeah, so it's like been like good pipeline and like efficacy of it.
Yeah, and I think it was on a LinkedIn post. It was just amazing how many of the people that had joined the accelerator, was it more than half of them that ended up really getting kind of a pivotal start, whether it was joining YC
Yeah,
and getting funding, which is very cool. Are you planning to do any more of these in the future?
potentially, yeah. Um, we might have something in the works with Startmate, but cannot announce it yet.
Okay, might be coming soon. As a founder, when you reflect on this journey over the past 12 to 24 months, what are some of your top learnings?
Yeah, there's been so many learnings. I think to be honest, when I like first got into this, um, was like pretty naive on how hard it would be. I think I was a bit lucky because I worked on the VC side before, so like interacted with a lot of founders. Um, but I feel like when founders talk to VCs, there's always like the front because you don't want to like act like you're dealing with like a lot of fires essentially in the startup. Which is like every startup founder I talk to in San Francisco always says like founder to founder, like my startup is on fire. And I think that's because you're like pushing to go faster. Um but yeah, I think like the experience at like Relevance AI also helped a lot because I got to work directly with like the founders there and like really see them go from like having one enterprise customer to like scaling to like a bigger pipeline. And like get to drive forward like the scaling side of things. Um yeah, but I think it was initially like a bit of a shock because I was like solo like founder, non-technical, which is like a bit taboo, and then had like raised pre-product essentially. So I think definitely what I didn't know was like getting the team right would be so hard, like the founding team. And this is something I also talk to like my roommates about it now in San Francisco. They've like all recently raised like pre-seed and seed rounds, and are still iterating through like that core team structure. But it's also like one of the most beautiful things about a startup is getting to choose who you work with day to day. But a lot of the time it is hard to find people um, who are like driven and like willing to make some sacrifices because startups is like almost like a lifestyle you choose where you're like obsessed with it. And where there's like good role fit too. So that's like some like one of the biggest learnings is just like learning how to hire properly. Um, and probably the second thing is, this was like, yeah, maybe a bit more personal, but it's like my by nature, I'm like more of like an indirect like type person, and like usually more empathetic, index to like that type of persona. And I think learning to lead, and like being conscious of those traits, is definitely something I've had to like adjust and like think through and be more like conscious of with time. I think like leaning on friends to like sense check me and things like that have been good in terms of um like avoiding, for example, like maybe letting someone stay on the team for too long because you're like afraid to like confront them and like thinking maybe you'll get better. But in startups, it's like very high stakes. Because like every week where you might let someone who's like maybe not as motivated as other people in the team stay in the team. It also drains the rest of the team. But then if you're your friends, maybe you want to like, keep giving them a chance. So I think it's like balancing like the nature of being like very like empathetic and like that side with like the harsh reality of like a startup is yeah not like other companies I guess in corporate where there's like performance reviews many times before maybe like you get laid off. But in startups it's a lot more cutthroat because you do want to deliver results. Yeah.
Yeah, it's so critical for early business success, and it's a really authentic reflection. Have you ever read the book, The Hard Thing About Hard Things by Ben Horowitz?
No, it does sound like a book I should read.
You should definitely read this book. There's a lot of
Mhm.
business books out there and they're giving you frameworks and templates and models for success. But in that
Yeah,
book, he really deliberately talks about all the most difficult things about being a leader. And he was also a founder. I mean, now he's obviously got the big VC firm with Mark Andreessen, but he talks
yeah,
about how challenging it is and what a learning it was for him as well of when to know when you have to fire a friend when you first go through layoffs. Is there a right way to do that? And so it's a really amazing book on the actual difficult things about founding and scaling a business.
yeah, yeah.
Highly recommend the
That's
read.
fair. Actually, I think I'll, yeah, search that up after this.
You
Yeah,
also talked about trying to find and hire the right people, and it's a difficult thing to do. What have you learned, and what do you look for now as you start to bring more people onto the team?
yeah. I think a lot of it is comes down to trust and just like for me, probably my biggest filter is like, would I hang out with this person like as a friend and like feel like safe and like motivated, like working with them until like 12 a.m. one day, maybe, and like how well do we understand each other and like where we want to go in life. Because I think in startups, there's a lot of highlights, obviously. Yeah, because you have like the opportunity to like really chase like a big outcome. But then there's also a lot of like low lights where you're like maybe finish like 5 hours of like back to back calls and then you're just like in angsty mood. You need to be with people who really like understand and like get it in terms of like startups are going to be like a stressful environment. You need people who have like good like emotional intelligence and are also like willing to roll up their sleeves when the times get tough, I think. Yeah.
If you had to look back and give Annie a piece of advice from 2 years ago, what would it be?
I think it'll be to trust my gut more. Like if I felt like something wasn't going right, to um just like journal more about it and like think about it more critically from like what would a friend tell me to do, and then just like trust that. And like not being afraid to call the shots. Yeah.
I want to ask you about the Sanfran startup community. So you've grown up in Australia, you know what the Australian startup community is like.
Yeah.
Describe Sanfran to me and how does it differ to the Australian startup community?
Yeah. I'd say we're both like full of very, very intelligent people. I think San Francisco is more of a mature like startup ecosystem. So like the VC funds here are bigger, and there's a lot more like support, and like all these different accelerators, and maybe if you're walking around like Soma and things like that. Basically everyone you bump into will be working in like tech or startups, and that's really exciting. I think Australia is, yeah, a bit more nascent, I'd say. But we do have like really amazing companies who are like building in Australia, like Relevance AI, Lorikeet, Canva, Atlassian, obviously, like Index. So there's like a lot of companies which are building in Australia, and you obviously have like the R&D like tax incentive, which is actually like a crazy like amount of savings companies can get by like keeping to build in Australia. Um, I think for us, like the big advantage of San Francisco is like access to our partner network because we partner really closely with companies like Lovable, Cohere, like Crew AI, a lot of like the companies who are based in San Francisco. It makes sense for us to be in SF. Um, yeah, and I also see in San Francisco there's a lot more density of like young people who like if they drop out of high school to take a bet on themselves, people like that's like good. Like good on you for like doing that and we're gonna support you to like get to your next step. And even if you don't get there, there's like a safety blanket, you could do anything. Whereas in Australia, I think if you talk to like a high school dropout, maybe it's like a bit more taboo or not as common. Yeah.
Yeah, I think there's also I haven't lived in San Francisco, but there's definitely I find a lack of awareness about even thinking about going to a startup, joining a startup, or founding your own business in Australia more generally. I know when I went to university, I didn't even really know or consider that as a pathway because there was just no one within my community that was within that field. And I feel like there's such an opportunity just to broaden that network within Australia to bring more people within the, I guess, the hub of building and being a part of early stage businesses.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. Yeah, I think, yeah, for me, where I first got really excited about startups, was actually at UTS, the UTS startup program. Um, my very first job before Westpac was interning there as an unpaid intern. I think I just got pretty lucky and like stumbled into them at like orientation day. So I think it's like little things like that at the grassroots level, which can actually like make a big impact later on too. Yeah.
Did you, growing up, what did you want to be growing up? Did you ever envision that you'd be going on this pathway?
Yeah. I grew up in like a pretty strict household. Like typical Asian parents. So my brother and sister are both like doctors and dentists. Um, so I guess my parents wanted me to be like a lawyer because that's like the last missing segment in like that nuclear like job occupation. Um, but I'd always like watched a lot of like Shark Tank and did like a lot of I guess like little projects when I was little. So art, for example, was like one thing where I wasn't like that good at it, but then just like every Sunday religiously I'll just like practice. Like sit down literally for like the whole day and draw. And then I got really good at it. And then in high school I actually had like my own art galleries. And I think like at a young age that wired in me, like if you work hard at something, um and it you can, like, get good at it even if you're, like, not good at it in the beginning, and then you can also make really good money, if you become world class at what you do and, like, really care about what you do. I think it's just, like, that effort of, like, trying and, like, knowing that you can, like, get there, which really makes a difference. I think that's kinda stayed with me, like, throughout, like, being able to go full time into Build Club too.
And your artworks are beautiful. When I was researching for this episode, I stumbled across your Instagram page and they're amazing. Your drawings are absolutely incredible.
Thanks. I appreciate that. Yeah, now I just draw as, like, a form of therapy.
Well, do you find
Yeah.
that that you brought that creativity into just any element of Build Club and the way that you've designed it and thought about it? Because it's such a fun looking page. When you land on the initial
Mhm.
landing page, it doesn't look
Yeah.
like your typical learning. I know you said it's not a learning platform, but it doesn't even look like your typical marketplace. Doesn't look like your typical learning development
Yeah. I
website.
think one person who joined my team recently said the branding is like an extension of my personality. Um, but I think like the Build Club brand is like designed to be like more approachable in terms of like anyone can AI and like very fun, like memey. Um, yeah, I try and contribute to the UI, but I'm honestly like not that good at it. Yeah, there's people better at it in my team. Yeah.
What's your vision for Build Club? What's your moonshot goal?
I think we want to be known as like the go-to place for any business or learner if they want to upskill in AI to come to us, and we're going to be like the most efficient and like best way to like learn AI quickly. I think our long-term vision is like we think the future of work is changing. I think now we all work 9 to 5 or maybe longer. um, but in future, I think work will be done very differently, where maybe when someone wakes up every day, you do like 5 different jobs for different companies because everyone works and then controls maybe like their little swarm of like AI workflows or AI agents, which they've made based off like their expertise. And then work is like broken down that way. And I think that's like a very exciting like place where the world is going in terms of now that AI has like democratized a lot of like knowledge work. What can people actually do and how will we work in future? And I think Build Club could be at like the forefront of figuring that out. Yeah.
Yeah, it's such a great vision as the world is trying to still figure out what do those new roles look like, and as roles start to get reshaped. Um, and the way that you just talked about that is the first time I've heard of that concept, like a complete modular type of work where it's more project
Mhm.
focused. This is a more tangential question. I read a study by MIT recently where they were analyzing the impacts on two groups of students, and they were both given the task of completing an essay. And one group of students was allowed to use AI tools and the other wasn't. And they came across some really interesting findings. So the group that used AI, all of their work was typically a lot more similar, a lot more generic, and they also felt less authorship over their own work than the group that
Mm.
manually researched and wrote their essays. What was really interesting about this study as well is they found that the group that didn't use AI, they had much higher levels of memory retention and about their own essays and critical thinking, and that had lingered over time. As we start to get into a world where we're going to use AI tools more and more, and they are integrating into parts of our lives, where do you most apply deep thinking work and creativity and critical thinking in your day to day?
That's a really good question. I was actually talking to this about like my team members today where like one of our developers just got into vibe coding where it's essentially maybe like when you're starting like a new like project or feature, instead of like coding first and then maybe using Copilot to like enhance, you just go straight and like type the prompt and then have AI lay out like the initial layout. Um, and then he actually found it took him more time, and it's like a lot more buggy than him, for example, going through the critical thinking steps first and then just getting AI to enhance it. So maybe that's like a good analogy, kind of almost like to this in terms of like the critical thinking skills and creativity are just going to become like more and more important. If anything, maybe we'll add some courses about them in Build Club in the future in terms of like how to practice like creative thinking, because I do think that's also like a muscle you can learn. Um, but it's probably going to be one of like the most important skills in terms of like differentiating in the workforce. Because if you can become like a really good like prompt engineer, which is where like almost like the interface of talking to any AI tool, um, I think the possibilities are like pretty limitless, and a lot of that comes from like thinking about things differently. Um, yeah, and I do feel like AI can enhance learning outcomes. So, for example, there's like some AI companies out there who use like flashcards to help people learn faster. So there's also like the flip side of that in terms of like um, you can get AI to teach you better too, instead of just like more of like a black and white approach to that.
Yeah, and I think one of the industries where that's going to be the most transformative is in the education sector, which has not had a lot of innovation for a very, very long time. And I
Yeah,
just feel like now it's at an intersect where there's no choice but to actually adapt and evolve the entire way that we think about the education curriculum and
yeah,
teaching young kids a very different type of skill set that will be needed for the future.
yeah, yeah, definitely. It's an exciting time.
What have been the most surprising or challenging parts of the journey with Build Club over the last couple of years?
Good question. It's exciting or challenging? I think definitely exciting was when we got our first paid customer. Because I never like I think it's like because it's like selling business to business. And I never like been like a purely sales role before. And then just like getting that validation that someone will pay for what we're building was like a very exciting moment internally. Um, I think like every day is pretty exciting. I know it sounds like very cheesy, but I think like with startups, because it's like kind of all consuming sometimes. Like our team at the moment, we work like 7-day weeks. Um, well, like I do, not everyone member in the team does. As long as we get our job done, it's fine. Um, so a lot of it, like it's a lot of hours we put in every week to our jobs. So if not enjoying it, then it's like just a horrible environment to be in. So a lot of like what we've been doing recently is also like thinking, how can we work in like the best way? So for example, like one question we tackled is like, should our team be remote or like in person? And we figured out that remote works the best because like sometimes I like to work from a cafe, sometimes Gerlene will be in Bali. So there's like all these different things to consider on like there's no one like right way to run a startup. As long as it works, it works. And it's probably when you're not running a startup like everyone else is like when you get like the outlier results because essentially like venture capital is a game of like backing the outliers. So we just want to do it in a way that works for us. Yeah.
What does a day in your life look like? And how do you maintain high level of energy, high level of productivity day in, day out?
Yeah. Yes. We've been like pretty locked in recently. So yeah, it's been so usually I wake up at like 6:30 and then I like to gym in the morning. So I do like group fitness classes because I can only exercise well when someone's like yelling at me. So yeah, so either like a Barry's or Soul Cycle and then get home, and then have breakfast. And then usually I walk to the office with my flatmate. So we'll probably clock in around like 8:30. And then after that, it's just like working. I do like deep work in the morning, and then we have like a stand up at 9:45. And then usually working until like normal end of day is like 5 or 6, and then we'll take like a break and like have dinner, and then just like keep working until fall asleep. On the weekend, I we go like hiking on like Sunday mornings. But at the moment, it's like a pretty intense period for us because we're onboarding like new customers um, and wanting to give it our best shot. So yeah, that sounded very sad.
No, you talk about it in such an exciting way, and it sounds like such a fun part of the journey. And I think that's a goal of life to maximize how much happiness we
Mm,
feel every single day. And you definitely speak about what you're doing with so much joy. So I think whatever you're doing, it sounds like you're on the right path. Um,
thanks.
Annie, final question. Let's make this a real experience for our audience that's listening. Whether someone listening is technical or not, what is one challenge that you'd set them to try on Build Club this weekend? Something that would give them the confidence of having built in AI for the first time or built something new in AI.
It's very timely.
This is the Annie challenge.
A challenge. So we have actually an academy with this cool company called Lindy AI. So they're one of the best like text to agent companies out there. And we recently filmed like a free part academy with them. And it's definitely one of the most user-friendly tools we have on the platform. So a challenge would be definitely to sign up and then just like give it a go. Because you can reach like a magic moment really quickly where you've like built an agent in like less than 2 hours. Yeah.
Okay, for everyone listening, this is the challenge. Join Build Club this weekend, build an agent, and see if you can do it within 2 hours. Annie, thank you so much for joining the Moonshot podcast. It's been incredibly fun and inspiring to have a conversation with you. Been quite early into your journey, but incredible wins, building lots of credibility and amazing global partnerships. I'm very excited to see what's next for Build Club and yourself personally.
Well, thank you. Thanks so much for having me.